Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching News Night on DD India, your primetime destination for news and bespoke analysis. It's good to have you again with us. All right, on the show tonight, all eyes on the US presidential debate as Donald Trump and Joe Biden get ready to spar in what promises to be a no-holds-barred contest to woo voters, wow critics, and win the race for White House. Also on the show, the Cabinet approves the adoption of the Jammu and Kashmir Panchayati Raj Act 1989 that promises to boost grassroots democracy there, and a Diwali bonus for 30 lakh non-gazetted government employees that puts cash in people's pockets on the eve of the festive season. Plus, news and updates from India and around the world, all that and much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. Cabinet approves adoption of Jammu and Kashmir Panchayati Raj Act 1989. It will help to establish a three-tier grassroots democracy, as is the case in other parts of the country. Paves the way for holding of local body polls. Cabinet also approves extension of market intervention scheme for apple procurement in Jammu and Kashmir for the 2020-21 season. Cabinet approves Diwali bonus for 2019-20 over 30 lakh government employees to benefit. The move comes with a financial implication of over 3,700 crore rupees. Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to President Moon Jae-in of South Korea, discusses about the COVID-19 pandemic, the need to preserve a transparent, development-oriented and rules-based global trading order, and the important role of the World Trade Organization. Bihar election campaign picks up pace. BJP leaders JP Nadda, Rajnath Singh and Yogi Adityanath hit the campaign trail. Lok Janshakti Party releases its vision document. The Congress Party releases its manifesto. And the RJD and JDU also campaign in full force. BJP attacks the Congress Party after its leader Rahul Gandhi meets a family with alleged links. The PFI says the opposition has a right to criticize, but not to hurt or weaken the nation. For the fifth consecutive day, COVID-19 cases in India remain below the 8 lakh mark. Case fatality rate drops further to 1.51%. Recovery rate rises to 88.81%. On Police Commemoration Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays tributes to the police personnel who made the supreme sacrifice protecting fellow citizens and the nation. Says police personnel always give their best without hesitation in any situation. Home Minister Amit Shah pays tributes to the police personnel at the National Police Memorial in New Delhi. India and the US set to discuss all bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. India to host the third India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue on 27th October in New Delhi. US Secretary of State Michael Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to participate in the dialogue. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar to lead the Indian delegation. And early voting in the US states of Wisconsin, Utah and Hawaii, with over 34 million early ballots already being cast across the country. The US goes to the polls on 3rd November. Opinion polls predict a close contest in swing states such as Florida, North Carolina and Pennsylvania. Welcome once again. The Cabinet on Wednesday announced a Diwali bonus for 30 lakh non-gazetted government employees. It also approved the adoption of the Jammu and Kashmir Panchayati Raj Act 1989, which will establish a three-tier grassroots democracy, as is the case in other parts of the country. Here's more. The government has taken another historic decision for Jammu and Kashmir. The Union Cabinet on Wednesday approved the establishment of a three-tier grassroots democracy for Jammu and Kashmir, as is the practice in other parts of the country. The move paves the way for holding of local body polls.
अब जिला विकास परिषद के सीधे चुनाव होकर जनप्रतिनिधियों के हाथ में सत्ता आएगी, तो ग्राम पंचायत, ब्लॉक पंचायत और अब जिला पंचायत, ऐसी पूरी त्रिस्तरीय रचना जो पंचायत राज के कानून में निहित है, वो अब कश्मीर में भी लागू होगी.
The minister said the abrogation of Article 370 has allowed the implementation of the central government's welfare schemes in Jammu and Kashmir. The holding of local body polls fulfills the promise made by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Jammu and Kashmir and Home Minister Amit Shah in Parliament.
अभी चुनाव की प्रक्रिया जल्दी शुरू होगी और लोग चुनाव से अपने प्रतिनिधि चुनेंगे. प्रधानमंत्री ने कश्मीर में और गृह मंत्री जी ने संसद में यह वादा किया था कि त्रिस्तरीय पंचायत समिति की रचना हम लागू करेंगे. वो आज के इस निर्णय से पूरी हो गई है.
In another big decision, the government announced a Diwali bonus for 30 lakh non-gazetted government employees. The move will put cash in people's pockets on the eve of the festival season. The bonus will be paid into the bank account of employees via direct benefit transfer. A total of 30.67 lakh employees would be benefited by the bonus announcement at a total financial implication of rupees 3,737 crore rupees.
30 लाख केंद्र सरकार के कर्मचारियों को 3,737 करोड़ रुपीस का बोनस का भुगतान तुरंत शुरू होगा. बोनस मिलेगा 30 लाख कर्मचारियों को जो नॉन गैजेटेड है, 17 लाख कर्मचारियों को 2,791 करोड़ इतना बोनस मिलेगा. 13 लाख कर्मचारियों को नॉन प्रोडक्टिविटी लिंक्ड बोनस मिलेगा और उन्हें भी 906 करोड़ रुपए 906 करोड़ रुपीस बोनस के उपलक्ष्य में मिलेंगे.
The cabinet also approved the extension of market intervention scheme for apple procurement in Jammu and Kashmir for the 2020-21 season on the same terms and conditions as was done during the last season. Government agencies will procure directly from apple farmers. The payment will be made through direct benefit transfer into the bank account of an apple farmer. It will provide an effective marketing platform to apple growers and generate jobs for locals. It will also assure a reasonable income for farmers. The cabinet decision will strengthen grassroots democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. It will help the people of Jammu and Kashmir to elect their representatives at the village, block and district levels. With Shailendra Mishra in New Delhi, News Night Desk, DD India. And now to news from the poll-bound state of Bihar. The Bihar election campaign picks up pace. BJP leaders led by JP Nadda, Rajnath Singh and Yogi Adityanath hit the campaign trail. Meanwhile, Lok Janshakti Party releases its vision document, while the Congress Party releases its manifesto. RJD and JDU leaders also campaign in full force. Here's more.
Campaigning for the first phase of Bihar Assembly elections has gained momentum in the poll-bound areas. Senior leaders and star campaigners of several political parties are holding multiple rallies to garner support of voters. For NDA candidates, BJP President JP Nadda, senior BJP leader Rajnath Singh and UP CM Yogi Adityanath held multiple rallies in the state on Wednesday.
कि तेजस्वी को मालूम है कि लालू जी की तस्वीर आएगी तो बिहार का लालटेन युग याद आएगा.
जैसे क्रिकेट में सचिन और सहवाग की ओपनिंग जोड़ी थी, वैसे ही यहां बिहार की राजनीति में भारतीय जनता पार्टी और जनता दल यू की जोड़ी है। चाहे हिंदुस्तान का कोई कोना हो, मेरे बहनों भाइयों, उंगली उठाकर नहीं कह सकता कि नीतीश कुमार के दामन पर कोई भ्रष्टाचार की दाग लगी हुई हो, यह नहीं कह सकता।
आज जो राशन मोदी जी के कारण और नीतीश कुमार जी के नाते आपको प्राप्त हो रहा है, गरीबों को प्राप्त हो रहा है। आखिर ये राशन लालू जी के शासनकाल में गरीब को क्यों नहीं मिल पाता था? जिन लोगों ने गरीबों का राशन तो खाया ही खाया, मूक जानवरों का चारा भी खा दिया है, उन लोगों से आप उम्मीद करते हैं रोजगार देंगे?
Addressing a rally in East Champaran, JDU National President and State CM Nitish Kumar lashed out at RJD Chief Lalu Prasad Yadav and reminded people about his Jungle Raj days.
शाम के बाद कोई घर से बाहर निकल पाता था? जो बुरा हाल था सबको पता है। यहाँ कानून का राज नहीं था, जंगल राज था। हमारा शुरू से था, पुरुष और स्त्री मिलकर दोनों काम करेंगे तभी समाज बहुत आगे बढ़ेगा, और वही काम हम लोगों ने किया।
Lok Janshakti Party President Chirag Paswan continued his attack on Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. On Wednesday, Chirag launched his party's vision document for upcoming Bihar Assembly polls.
हर खेत को बिजली, हर खेत को पानी, ये प्राथमिकता पर हम लोग को लेकर चलना चाहिए था, ना कि 15 साल के बाद आप इन चीजों का जिक्र करें।
RJD leader Tejasvi Yadav once again challenged Chief Minister Nitish Kumar to debate on development in the state. He accused the Janata Dal United of committing 60 scams during Nitish Kumar's tenure.
नीतीश कुमार जी 15 साल शासन करने के बाद ये कह रहे हैं कि नौकरी देने का पैसा कहाँ से आएगा। अब उनको ये बताना चाहिए कि जो 60 घोटाले इन लोगों ने किए हैं, तो लगभग 30,000 करोड़ बिहार के बजट का पैसा कहाँ गया वो 30,000 करोड़ रुपए।
The third and the final phase of polling is scheduled for November 7th across 78 assembly seats. The counting of votes for the assembly election will take place on 10th of November. Bureau Report, News Night Desk, DD India.
Now, 21st October is observed as Police Commemoration Day. Prime Minister Modi paid tributes to the police personnel who made the supreme sacrifice protecting fellow citizens and the nation. He said on the occasion that police personnel always give their best without hesitation in any situation. Home Minister Amit Shah also paid tribute to the police personnel at the National Police Memorial in New Delhi.
On the occasion of the Police Commemoration Day, a grateful nation paid rich tributes to the martyred police personnel and jawans of the Central Paramilitary Forces who laid down their lives for the security of the nation. The main function was held at Delhi's National Police Memorial, where Union Home Minister Amit Shah paid tributes to the brave heart jawans. On this occasion, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also saluted the courage of police personnel. PM tweeted that, on this occasion, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while saluting the courage of the police personnel, said that Police Commemoration Day is about expressing gratitude to our police personnel and their families all across India. We pay tributes to all the police personnel martyred in the line of duty. Their sacrifice and service would always be remembered. Further, the Prime Minister said, from preserving law and order to solving horrendous crimes, from assistance in disaster management to fighting COVID-19, our police personnel always give their best without hesitation. We are proud of their diligence and readiness to assist citizens. Recalling the sacrifice of the brave police personnel, Union Home Minister said that the Modi government is committed to protect the interest of the police personnel and their families.
देश की सुरक्षा कर रहे हैं, देश के लॉ एंड ऑर्डर को संभाल रहे हैं। मैं आपको मोदी सरकार की ओर से आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं, आप देश को संभालिए, देश की आंतरिक सुरक्षा को संभालिए। नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार आपके और आपके परिजनों की रक्षा के लिए सदैव तत्पर रहेगी, जागरूक रहेगी और प्रतिबद्ध भी रहेगी।
Mentioning about the present challenges of the police and security forces, Home Minister Amit Shah said that the Union government is taking relentless steps towards modernization of the police forces. He also said that the government is working on making the border impregnable by linking technology with human force.
मानव बल के साथ टेक्नोलॉजी को जोड़कर देश की सीमाओं को अभेद बनाना, वो हमारा लक्ष्य होना चाहिए और इस पर गृह मंत्रालय बहुत डिटेल काम कर रहा है। मुझे आशा है कि आने वाला परिवर्तन भी हमारे बहादुर जवान स्वीकारेंगे, अपने आप को तैयार करेंगे और टेक्नोलॉजी और तत्परता दोनों का मिलान करते हुए हम देश की सीमाओं को सुरक्षित कर पाएंगे। मैं जानता हूं कि दुनिया की अपेक्षा प्रति 1 लाख व्यक्ति पुलिस कर्मचारी जो होने चाहिए वो हमारे यहाँ कम है, मगर मैं आपको आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं कि ढेर सारी चीजें हम ऐसी करने जा रहे हैं जिससे कमी आपको नहीं खलेगी।
It was on this day in 1959 when CRPF led a saga of valor and sacrifice in the inaccessible, inhospitable terrain of hot springs in Ladakh. A patrol party of 20 personnel of CRPF and Intelligence Bureau had gone to search for a missing reconnaissance party when it was ambushed by the Chinese army. In spite of sudden attack and disadvantageous tactical position, the CRPF men fought valiantly against the Chinese army, who were in large numbers and heavily armed. In this battle, 10 CRPF men were martyred in the defense of the country. The Police Commemoration Day is observed on 21st October every year to honor the loyalty and supreme sacrifice of the police personnel for the nation. In 2018, Prime Minister Narendra Modi dedicated the National Police Memorial located at Chanakyapuri in New Delhi to the nation. "264 personnel of the state police forces as well as those of the Central Armed Police Forces gave supreme sacrifice in the line of duty during the past 1 year. Over 340 police personnel fell prey to COVID-19 in the line of duty while contributing to the COVID management." Sudhakar Das's report for DD India.
The Police Commemoration Day was also observed in the states. The Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh, R.K. Mathur, offered floral tributes at the newly built police memorial in Leh. The day was also observed in Goa's capital, Panaji. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath paid tributes to the police personnel who made the supreme sacrifice for the country at a function held at the Lucknow police lines. Similar functions were held in West Bengal and Kerala too. Now, India will be hosting the third India-US 2+2 ministerial dialogue on 27th October in New Delhi. The US Foreign Minister Michael Pompeo and Defense Minister Mark Esper will be visiting New Delhi on 26th and 27th of this month to participate in the dialogue. From the Indian side, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar will lead the delegation. The first 2+2 ministerial dialogues were held in New Delhi in September 2018 and Washington, D.C. in 2019. Now, the agenda for the third dialogue will cover all bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. Now, speaking to reporters, Pompeo said he is looking forward to the 2+2 dialogue with India. Listen in.
Cooperating with our partners and allies and friends across the world in unprecedented ways. It's been a hallmark of the administration that frankly deserves more attention. Look, it starts with working to go out and meet with these people. This Sunday I'll depart for India, for Sri Lanka, for the Maldives, and then on to Indonesia. On every stop I will discuss a broad range of bilateral topics, but also work to find out with each of those countries the best ways that we can make sure that we cooperate to preserve a free and open Indo-Pacific. I'm especially looking forward to doing that with Secretary Esper in our 2+2 ministerial dialogue with our Indian friends. It's been postponed because of the virus. I'm glad we're going to be able to execute that in person here in just a few days. I'm sure that my meetings will also include discussions on how free nations can work together to thwart threats posed by the Chinese Communist Party. And on that front, good news, this Friday the EU High Representative Joseph Borrell and I will launch the US-EU dialogue on China. I'm confident that the discussion will deepen our long-term engagement with EU friends on this important issue.
All right, now to our deep dive into US election 2020. All eyes on the U.S. presidential debate, even as early voting took place in Wisconsin, Utah, and Hawaii. Over 34 million early ballots have already been cast across the country. The U.S. goes to the polls on 3rd November. Now, opinion polls predict a close contest in swing states such as Florida, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania.
It's being touted as the grand finale of the presidential debate in the United States elections. US President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden will debate for a final time on Thursday in Nashville, Tennessee. The campaign so far has been a high-voltage, no-holds-barred affair with accusations flying thick and fast from both the camps. President Donald Trump campaigned in the crucial battleground state of Pennsylvania on Tuesday, October 20th, telling supporters he needed a second term in the White House to ensure a successful recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic fallout. He warned that Democratic rival Joe Biden would decimate the state's energy and manufacturing jobs.
This is an election between the Trump super recovery, which is happening right now, and a Biden depression. If he gets elected, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. You know, he's going to double, triple, and now quadruple your taxes. I don't think so. I think I know the people of Erie pretty well. They don't like that. It's a choice between our plan to kill the virus or Biden's plan to kill the American dream, and that's what he'd be doing. Joe Biden has made a corrupt bargain in exchange for his party's nomination. He's handed control of his party over to socialists. I added another word: communists, Marxists, left-wing extremists.
Trump's handling of the coronavirus pandemic, which has so far killed more than 220,000 people in the United States and thrown millions out of work, has taken a toll on his re-election prospects. Biden has criticized Trump for failing to confront the pandemic and rushing to reopen the economy and belittling safety measures such as social distancing and wearing masks.
Folks, and you too have a sacred duty to vote, and it matters. North Carolina matters. And Senator Harris and I are asking you for your trust and support. We'll always have your back, I promise you. So please vote and help get out the vote. Go to iwillvote.com/NC. Early voting started on Thursday. We got to keep the incredible momentum going. We can't let up. My grandfather would say, this guy's gone around the bend if he thinks we turned the corner. Turn the corner. Things are getting worse. He continues to lie to us about the circumstances.
Trump's visit to Pennsylvania comes ahead of Thursday's second and final debate between him and Joe Biden, which will give him a prime-time opportunity to change the trajectory of the race. President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger Joe Biden met in Cleveland on September 29th for the first of 3 debates ahead of the November 3 election. That debate was marred by frequent interruptions, mostly by Trump. On many occasions, Trump repeatedly interrupted or sought to talk over Biden and the debate's moderator. The second scheduled debate, set for 15th October, was cancelled when Trump pulled out of the event after organizers said that it would be virtual to lessen the risk of infection. In between, the candidates have been touring the vast nation trying to secure votes, particularly in the swing states. Trump and Biden participated in simultaneous town hall broadcasts on October 15th on separate television networks after the second debate was called off. The split-screen showdown offered a stark reminder of the many ways the campaign season has been changed by the pandemic. An important aspect of this election has been early voting that has already clocked about 28 million counts. 27.9 million Americans have already cast ballots either by mail or in person ahead of the November 3rd election. Across the United States, millions of mail-in ballots in the November election are being received by county and municipal election officials. The Republican Party has sought, with mixed success, to limit voting by mail in states that expanded it in response to fears of spreading COVID-19 at crowded polling places. With nearly 2 weeks to go until election day, Biden holds a lead in national opinion polls and in many battleground states where the election is likely to be decided. US presidential elections are determined by electoral votes allotted to US states and territories based largely on their populations rather by a tally of the popular vote nationwide. Bureau Report, News 9 Desk, DD India.
All right, time now for our In Focus segment in which we are discussing about all eyes on the Trump-Biden debate. Joining me are two very special guests, Ambassador Meera Shankar and Professor Harsh Vardhan Pant. Thank you for making time to be with us on Newsnight. Now, Ambassador Shankar has served as India's ambassador to the US between 2009 and 2011. He served one more time early on in a career between 1991 and 95 as well. And Professor Pant is Director Studies and Head of the Strategic Studies Program as the Observer Research Foundation, which is a privately held think tank based in New Delhi. But before we come to the topic of discussion, Ambassador Shankar and Professor Pant, a quick comment from the two of you. The news coming out of New Delhi this moment is that India will be hosting the 2+2 dialogue on the 26th. Pompeo and Esper will be in New Delhi on the 26th. And just a few days back, the US Deputy Foreign Minister Stephen Biegun was in New Delhi as well. What do you make of the fact that three officials, senior US officials, will be visiting New Delhi barely a few days before the November 3rd elections? What does that tell you something about the state of play in India-US ties? Starting with you, Ambassador Shankar, very quickly.
Well, I think that this is part of the growing strategic importance that the US is attaching, countering China in the Indo-Pacific. Particularly, I think Mike Pompeo has made this his objective. And the 2+2 dialogue is a continuation of a dialogue which has been institutionalized. It's held once every year, alternatively in each country. The last one was held in Washington, and this one was deferred because of the pandemic. So now they are holding it, and we should expect some major decisions. One, I think we could see an announcement about one of the foundational agreements with US, BECA, the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement on Geospatial Data, which is the last of the foundational agreements which the two countries have been discussing. And hopefully they have been able to narrow their differences, and we may see some announcement during the 2+2 dialogue. The other major decision that India has taken is to invite Australia to participate in the Malabar exercises. So in a sense, for the first time, you're having the Quad take part together in a military exercise.
Absolutely.
You did have a similar exercise in 2007 with Singapore also participating and the 4 Quad members. But after China had expressed reservations, I think the exercises were called off. So in some sense, I would say that this is a response to China's very aggressive and even threatening behavior vis-a-vis its neighbors.
Right, so China must be clearly on the US mind as we speak. Professor Pant, very quickly, your opening thoughts on the fact that Biegun, Pompeo, Esper will all be traveling to New Delhi the last, barely a fortnight to go for the elections, and 1 week before the elections, Pompeo and Esper will be in town. And by the way, Pompeo will also be traveling to Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Indonesia. So what's on Pompeo's mind, Professor Pant?
Well, I think Pompeo has and the Trump administration has taken a very, very strong line vis-a-vis China. So clearly there is an element where he's trying to shore up the support for American strategy of free and open Indo-Pacific by bringing in different stakeholders into the conversation.
Right.
And I think the India visit in particular is important, as Ambassador Shankar underlined, because of this. We have seen how important India has become, not only because what America wants India to do, but also how India is developing its own profile in the region and how it is shaping up and looking at engaging the wider Indo-Pacific community. So I think that the fact that this visit is happening at such close quarters from the US elections, despite the fact that it's a very high stakes battle being fought in Washington, here are the American officials that are trying to bolster relations with India, I think is a sign of the maturity of the relationship, how far these relations have traveled, and the significance that both countries attach to developing this engagement.
Absolutely.
And I think what Ambassador Shankar underlined, the fact that there is at least the BECA, the foundational agreement on the table, which is likely to be signed, signals that India and America are now extremely convergent on the foundational issues of the day, which is how do you manage stability in the region and how do you manage the power transition that is happening in the region.
Right, point taken. Now, coming to the topic of discussion, Ambassador Shankar, all eyes on that much anticipated Trump-Biden debate on Friday morning India time. Now, I want to ask you, because you've been watching American politics from very close quarters in all these years, do debates actually help influence the American voter? Does a voter actually wait till the last week before the elections to make up their mind?
Well, it depends, if there are a large number of voters who are shown as undecided, I think you get a swing because of the debates. But where voters seem to have made up their minds and the number of undecided voters is relatively small, then I think the debates don't have such an impact. So one will have to wait and see. By and large, in this election, the polls have been pretty steady in terms of showing, a lead at the national level for Biden, ranging anywhere between 7% to 14%. At the moment, Real Clear Politics, which averages the polls, it has a poll of polls, is showing an 8.6% lead for Biden at the national level. The lead in the swing states for Biden has been fluctuating. And I think President Trump is focusing his efforts on these swing states because it's his victory in these states, actually in the last election, which helped to swing the election for him. But this time round, Biden has a lead in the swing states, though in some of the states it doesn't appear so decisive at the moment. But in others like Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, it seems to be fairly high.
I see.
In Florida, North Carolina, and perhaps Pennsylvania in the latest polls, it's not so decisive. So I would imagine that in this election, many voters have made up their minds already. Trump's 42%, approval, and his constituency with that 42% is pretty solid. But there are more people who disapprove of him than approve of him. And his challenge is to try to extend his constituency between his beyond his core supporters, which may be difficult this time.
Indeed. Professor Pant, when we look back at the first Trump-Biden debate, domestic issues, hijacked the agenda, so to speak. But looking ahead at the next debate, the third and last debate, do you think the focus might shift to other issues, especially foreign policy? I mean, how do you compare a Trump foreign policy of the last 4 years and a Biden foreign policy stance on issues that concern the world at large?
Well, I think, the second debate that did not happen and that was cancelled was, and that has tended to be traditionally to be the foreign policy debate. And I think what we are, and therefore we sort of missed out on one debate that could have exclusively focused on foreign policy. But what the list of issues that are on the table for this debate is a mix of domestic and foreign policy. There is going to be a segment on national security, for example, in Friday's debate, and that is perhaps would be one aspect where you can judge where the two candidates differ. But I think if you look at the sort of issues that are on the table for the world at large, I mean, there is an expectation that at least in terms of style, Mr. Biden would be more conciliatory towards America's allies and partners in particular, and Mr. Biden might be willing to rebuild the fraying multilateral order that is something that Mr. Trump really does not like very much. So if you look at Mr. Trump's record of withdrawing from certain multilateral platforms, of making a case for America first, I think that might see a shift. However, it is also true that on the larger issues of global politics, which is in particular how will Mr. Biden manage China, there is still no clarity. We still are getting mixed signals, and there is a sense that Mr. Biden's approach, if you listen to him carefully, is more or less going to be along similar trajectory. In fact, even on economics, where he's talking of building America's manufacturing base, might sound different. But if you read it carefully, it looks very similar to Mr. Trump's America First. So while we might see, for example, Mr. Biden adopting a certain diplomatic style which might be different from Mr. Trump, my sense is on the broader strategic issues, there is going to be not much of a difference. The difference is going to be on emphasis. I think there is a strong constituency in Mr. Biden's camp, which believes very, very strongly on issues like human rights, like environment, climate change issues. And they are going to dominate his agenda because on the left, on the progressive left of the Democratic Party, that's the constituency that has been growing in salience. And they would be putting pressure on the moderate segment of the Democratic Party to push their agenda. So I think what is going to be interesting if Mr. Biden wins is what happens within the Democratic Party itself, because a lot of contestation would be about which constituencies of Mr. Biden actually get reflected in the kind of appointments he makes and the kind of issues he tackles. But I think broadly on the issue of China, for example, there does not seem to be much difference between what Mr. Biden is saying, at least at the moment, and what Mr. Trump has done over the last 4 years.
Indeed, fair point. I'm running out of time. Ambassador Shankar, very quickly, a couple of minutes to discuss about the Indian diaspora, if you will. Now, has the Indian American community or the voting community become a force to reckon with in U.S. domestic politics? Have they found their voice? Have they become a force of consequence in U.S. politics?
They're certainly more visible in U.S. politics and participating more noticeably in the whole political process. The biggest example being Kamala Harris, though she stresses her black heritage, she's also half Indian. So that is a very visible symbol of the strides that Indian Americans have made. But the community overall doesn't have such large numbers as to influence the vote, but they are in numbers in some of the key swing constituencies and states. So there, the way they vote could impact the election result, and they are being wooed very vociferously by both sides. They tend to vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party, and polls this time also show that that is the case, but some more numbers have shifted towards Trump. Now, for them, really, there are domestic issues of race relations, immigration, all that, which matter far more than Indo-US relations. See, Indo-US relations don't really become the guiding factor in terms of how the community votes. A large percentage of the community is in academics or in the professions. They're part of what one could call a very broad intelligentsia. Most of them tend to vote for the Democrats. Now, there are others who are fairly rich, and many of those who are richer, the richer Indian American elite, tend to vote for the Republicans because lower taxes matter as much to them as to other richer Americans.
Indeed. All right, on that note, Ambassador Shankar and Professor Pant, thank you so much for making time to be with us on Newsnight. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, moving on, Prime Minister Modi spoke with President Moon Jae-in of South Korea on Wednesday. They reviewed important global developments, including the progress of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing diversification of international value chains, the need to preserve a transparent, development-oriented and rules-based global trading order, and the important role of the World Trade Organization. The two leaders agreed to remain in touch on the above issues and to further accelerate bilateral cooperation in all areas. Now, the East Delhi Municipal Corporation has started spraying chemical dust suppressant in Mandoli, one of 3 pollution hotspots under its jurisdiction. The civic body is spraying magnesium chloride flakes mixed in water to control dust pollution. Tapas Bhattacharya has more.
East Delhi Municipal Corporation has started spraying chemical dust suppressant. How this is going to help to curb pollution in the national capital? Let's find out in this report. In order to curb the air pollution, East Delhi Municipal Corporation has started spraying chemical dust suppressant to control dust pollution in major hotspot areas. The civic body is spraying magnesium chloride flakes mixed in water to control dust pollution. It helps in settling dust for 8 to 10 hours compared to plain water, whose effect lasts 15 to 30 minutes. The solution leads up to 35% reduction in the daily PM10 level. Last year also, East Delhi Municipal Corporation has used dust suppressant on the roads and surfaces to mitigate the air pollution due to dust.
ये जो आप देख रहे हैं वाटर स्प्रिंकलर 40 मशीन है, इनको हमने तैयार किया है। इसके अंदर हमने बिना रसायन युक्त, इसके अंदर एक जो है डस्ट सप्रेसेंट जो है वो एक इसमें रसायन मतलब वो इसमें मिलाया है जो धूल को लगभग 10 से 12 घंटे तक उसको उड़ने नहीं देता। ये अपने आप में विशेष प्रकार का। और इसके अलावा हमारी ये 40 मशीनें पूरे पूर्वी दिल्ली नगर निगम में काम कर रही हैं।
Reliable and efficient, these dust suppressor helps in reduction in the daily PM10 average. These comes in ready-to-use flakes form, can be mixed with water and clings to roads and does not blow away. Can easily be applied using any watering equipment. Eco-friendly, easily biodegradable and non-toxic for people. These are non-hazardous to groundwater and at the same time cost-effective.
सर्दी से पहले प्रदूषण की एक छाया पूरी दिल्ली के ऊपर छाती है और उससे दिल्ली के नागरिकों को बड़ी परेशानी होती है, सांस लेने में परेशानी होती है, दम घोटू एक वातावरण बनता है। उससे निजात पाने के लिए पूर्वी दिल्ली नगर निगम ने कमर कसी है और पूरी तरह से अपने टैंकर्स के माध्यम से हम जगह जगह छिड़काव कर रहे हैं।
East Delhi Municipal Corporation is using 40 water sprinkling machines of about 9,000 liters capacity, which make several trips during the day, spraying water in their routes. Central Pollution Control Board has asked the 3 corporations to go for chemical-based dust suppressant instead of normal water-based dust suppressants. Mechanical sweepers, water sprinklers and other resources have been used to combat the menace of pollution. The focus is on the hotspot areas which has seen a spurt in pollution activities in recent times. With camera person Mohit Joshi and Vinay, this is Tapas Bhattacharya, DD News, Delhi.
All right, time now for all the news related to COVID-19 pandemic in India in our COVID Wrap segment.
India's battle against COVID is gaining strength with each passing day. The number of active cases has remained below the 7.5 lakh mark for the second consecutive day. The number of daily recoveries has been increasing. In the last 24 hours, 61,775 people have recovered from COVID. 10,83,608 tests were conducted in the country. The effective strategy of testing, tracking and treatment throughout the country has helped in keeping the death rate low. The recovery rate from the infection has increased to 88.81%. The cumulative number of COVID recoveries has risen to 67,95,103. The mortality rate is 1.51%. Currently, 14 states and union territories have less than 1% mortality. Meanwhile, a special team of the Union Health Ministry is visiting Bihar to ensure that COVID protocols are observed in letter and spirit during the election-related activities. The state goes to the polls in 3 phases between October 28 and November 7. The Health Ministry team will monitor general compliance with its prescribed health guidelines and protocols to see that there is no untoward super spread or surge of COVID cases during campaigning and voting. The Election Commission had issued directives for compliance of the Health Ministry guidelines. The Union Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, reviewed the situation at a virtual meeting with the Additional Secretary and other officials of the Health and Medical Department in Madhya Pradesh. He also addressed the annual meeting of the World Bank on the investment in COVID-19 vaccine and primary health facilities.
To address present and future challenges, the public health research agenda for COVID-19 has been accelerated to advance the development of an affordable vaccine as well as ensure its equitable distribution. Our private plasma companies, in partnership with foreign and domestic research institutes, are expediting trials of their vaccine candidates. We also plan to leverage an integrated IT platform for managing vaccine distribution.
Meanwhile, further steps are being taken to bring life back on track. The Kaziranga National Park has been reopened to the public from Wednesday. Kohora and Bagori National Park will be open from November. Tourists will be able to travel in a jeep in the Kaziranga Park once again. Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal said that it will add new energy to tourism in Assam. He appealed to the people to follow COVID protocols.
देश और विदेश की टूरिस्ट के लिए काजीरंगा नेशनल पार्क को ओपन किया और आज से हमारे टूरिस्ट काजीरंगा आने के लिए ये सुविधा लागू किया गया है.
As the fight against COVID is not over and the numbers are increasing across the world, an appeal goes out to people from every platform to wear masks and follow all necessary precautions. In view of the festival season and the coming winter, everyone has to take every precaution necessary to prevent themselves and others falling prey to the COVID infection. With Nitendra Singh and Guwahati Bureau News Night Desk, DD India.
And now take a look at what else is making news around India in our national roundup segment.
Karnataka Chief Minister B.S. Yediyurappa undertook an aerial survey of flood-hit regions after heavy rains battered the districts of Karnataka. He announced after due consultations with administrative officials, funds will be released accordingly for the state. The first affected districts in Karnataka include Kalburgi, Belgaum, amongst others. The Chief Minister also said that a ground report will be prepared and sent to the centre, adding that there is a possibility that the central team will be sent for assessment of the flood-ravaged regions. The high-level meeting between the Home Secretaries of Assam and Mizoram concluded today in order to settle down the border dispute between the two regions. Reportedly, the two sides arrived at a consensus for peaceful and stable restoration of the dispute. Both sides agreed to maintain law and order in the area and also to find an amicable settlement of the border dispute between Assam and Mizoram. Senior BJP leader in Maharashtra, Eknath Khadse, has tendered his resignation. He will be reportedly joining Rashtrabadi Congress Party. After tendering his resignation, Khadse said that he has resigned from the primary membership of the party after serving the party for almost 40 years. Tulsi Ram Silawat, Cabinet Minister in Shivraj Singh-led BJP government in Madhya Pradesh, tendered his resignation on Wednesday. He cited the reason for resigning as not being elected as a legislator within 6 months of his appointment. Silawat handled Water Resources Department in Shivraj Singh Chauhan's cabinet. The Enforcement Directorate on Wednesday questioned Richa Dubey, wife of slain gangster Vikas Dubey. Summons were issued to her earlier. Inquiries have been initiated by the ED under provisions of Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The wife of the slain gangster was also probed on sources of property investments reportedly by Vikas Dubey. Delhi government launches Red Light On, Gadi Off initiative in a bid to tackle air pollution in national capital on Wednesday. The campaign will continue till November 15th. The campaign promotes switching off the engine of the vehicles while waiting at the red signals.
Moving on, Union Housing and Urban Affairs Minister Hardeep Singh Puri has said that all organizations should undertake efforts to identify more and more activities to be automated and free of human interface. He was speaking at the launch of eDharti Geo Portal. The minister launched the service to provide property certificates by Land and Development Office through the portal. The certificate includes property details as well as cadastral map. And Prime Minister Modi has extended Durga Puja greetings to the people of Bengal. He also tweeted to confirm that he will in fact join the divine celebrations via a video conference. He said in a tweet that Durga Puja is an auspicious occasion which celebrates the victory of good over evil. We pray to Ma Durga to bless us with strength, happiness and good health. Sisters and brothers of West Bengal, tomorrow on the auspicious day of Ma Durga Puja's Mahashashti, I would join the divine celebrations via video conferencing and shall also be extending my greetings to everyone. Do join the program live, unquote. Moving on, at least 15 people were killed in a stampede as thousands of Afghans gathered near Pakistan's consulate in eastern Afghanistan. About 3,000 Afghans had gathered on the open ground outside the consulate, waiting to collect tokens needed to apply for a visa. The European Union told the United Kingdom on Wednesday to make up its mind on Brexit, putting the onus back on London to unlock trade talks, as the bloc's chief negotiator said an agreement was still within reach. A frustrated European Union and peaked Britain both exhorted each other this week to compromise to avoid a disruptive finale to the 5-year-long Brexit drama that would add to economic pain from the coronavirus crisis. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is facing a no-confidence debate in Parliament brought by the nation's far-right Vox party. The Parliament is hearing arguments for and against the motion on Wednesday before a vote scheduled for Thursday. Vox argues that Sanchez's government must depart for its poor handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. If the no-confidence vote were to succeed, it would replace the current left-wing coalition government with one led by a Vox leader, Santiago Abascal. A NASA probe orbiting an asteroid over 100 million miles from Earth successfully snatched on Tuesday a sample from the celestial body's rocky surface to bring home the space agency's first handful of pristine asteroid rocks. NASA's minivan-sized spacecraft made a 4-hour descent toward the rugged surface of the Bennu asteroid. The spacecraft performed a meticulous 5-second touch-and-go technique by autonomously extending its 11-foot-long robotic arm toward a flat patch of gravel, roughly the size of a basketball court. The spacecraft was launched in 2016 from the Kennedy Space Center. It's been in orbit around the asteroid for nearly 2 years now, preparing for the touch-and-go maneuver. The actions of a British black activist who carried an injured counter-protester to safety during clashes in London has inspired an orchestra to create a new musical piece based on his heroism. Patrick Hutchinson became an accidental hero when a Reuters photographer caught the moment he lifted an injured counter-protester onto his shoulder as Black Lives Matter protesters and counter-protesters clashed near Waterloo Station in June. The now iconic moment inspired composer James B. Wilson to create a piece of classical music with spoken words from poet Yomi Sode, performed by the British J&K Orchestra for the first time in front of a small audience on 19th October. Now, we all remember the dialogue, "The show must go on," from the iconic Raj Kapoor film Mera Naam Joker. Now, from real life to real life, a circus company in Bulgaria struggles against all odds to prove this right. Alexander Bolkansky, a former acrobat and trapeze artist and the founder of Bulgaria's largest circus, found the going tough when COVID-19 pandemic struck Eastern Europe. Bolkansky mortgaged his home to raise 2.5 lakh euros for a new tent order to mark the anniversaries. He had to rearrange his program 6 times amid accumulating bills and artist cancellations. The circus only opened its doors on 1st September. Despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, Bolskansky remains defiant that the show must and will go on. Let's take a look at these visuals, which prove beyond doubt that when the courage to fight against all odds runs through the veins, the show just goes on. The Saraba News continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Don't forget, it's a simple task. Just wear a mask. Join DD India's Mask Up campaign to beat COVID-19. Thanks for watching. Bye.